Well, the anger against Trump's immigration raids has now spread to San Francisco, where about 60 people have been arrested by the police. Protesters gathered in the northern California city to oppose President Donald Trump's immigration raids. The San Francisco protests come in the wake of demonstrations triggered in downtown Los Angeles that resulted in dozens of arrests, who authorities call illegal migrants and gang members.
Hello and welcome to my channel. Please subscribe. Now let's start. California never fails to bring the drama. Just when you think maybe, just maybe, you'll get a quiet week without chaos, the state slams the door on that idea. This time, it's no small headline either. The Supreme Court just ruled that over 300 National Guard troops will remain stationed in Los Angeles indefinitely. Forget calm, California's turning, until further notice, into its new favorite lifestyle choice.
But the answer is, look, Chicago's very interesting because I watched Pritzker get up and say about, we don't need help, we're safe. But 2 weeks ago, they had 6 people murdered, and they had 24 people hit by bullets. Well, we're going in. I didn't say when, we're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing.
Think about that for a second. The National Guard isn't just passing through, they're practically pitching tents. And not the s'mores and guitar type of camp either. This is the version with riot shields, tear gas, rubber bullets, and enough tactical gear to make downtown Los Angeles look like a rehearsal for the next dystopian blockbuster.
Meanwhile, mayhem gripped Los Angeles as demonstrations continued for the third day. About 300 National Guard officials arrived in the city on the orders of President Trump to quell the demonstrations. Police and protesters confronted each other near a federal building in downtown LA, where California National Guard troops were currently deployed. About a dozen National Guard members, along with Department of Homeland Security personnel, pushed back a group of demonstrators that amassed outside the federal building.
You'd figure a move like that might cool tensions, right? Nope. Gavin Newsom wasn't exactly passing out thank you cards. The guy was livid, like someone just declared avocado toast illegal across California. He tore into the decision, blasting Trump for overstepping, calling the deployment pointless, and warning it only put people at risk. Newsom wasn't just annoyed, he was fiery, framing the move as reckless, political theater dressed up in camouflage instead of actual leadership.
President Trump doubling down on his plan to send National Guard troops to Chicago. In response, Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois called Trump unhinged and said federal intervention was neither needed nor wanted.
Unhinged remarks a few minutes ago, begging me to call him. No, I will not call the president, asking him to send troops to Chicago. I've made that clear already. I'm aware that the president of the United States likes to go on television and beg me to call and ask him for troops. I find this extraordinarily strange, as Chicago does not want troops on our streets.
And I'll be real with you. When I first saw the court ruled in Trump's favor, I was shocked. I didn't expect that. Watch what I mean. A left-leaning California court, the kind you'd assume would throw Newsom a safety net, basically looked him dead in the eye and said, nope, Trump was right. I had to read that line twice just to make sure my brain wasn't malfunctioning.
What then ensued was a use of tear gas, flashbang grenades, rubber bullets. Federal agents detaining people and undermining their due process rights. Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders, commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets illegally and for no reason. This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president
And that's another defeat for Newsom. Honestly, at this point, it's becoming a pattern. He keeps trying to frame himself as the guy who can stand up to Trump, like he's the main character in some heroic saga. But every time he makes a move, he gets swatted down. It's like watching somebody show up to a heavyweight fight with foam boxing gloves. Entertaining? Yes. Effective? Not so much.
We have some breaking news. A federal judge just ruled that both President Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth violated the law by using the military and the Los Angeles area over the summer. The Trump administration deployed thousands of federalized California National Guard members and Marines during an immigration crackdown in June. And this decision comes as the president weighs, as we were just talking about, whether to send National Guard members to other cities, as he has done in Washington, D.C. Joining us now is former federal prosecutor and Politico magazine senior writer Ankush Khardori.
The people are starting to notice too. Californians are asking themselves why their governor keeps picking these fights and why he keeps losing them. Because let's face it, Trump's winning streak in court is starting to look like one of those sports records nobody thought possible. Meanwhile, Newsom's out here fumbling, like he dropped his keys and can't figure out where.
And earlier today, a federal judge in California ruled that Trump's takeover of Los Angeles was illegal. Now, this past June, you may remember, the president deployed 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines to L.A. after thousands of people took to the streets to protest the president's immigration policies. Well, meanwhile, people have also flooded the streets in Chicago. This happened yesterday. This was all in an effort to stop Trump from expanding his federal law enforcement surge to the Windy City.
And let's not forget what kicked this off. When the National Guard first rolled into Los Angeles, it wasn't subtle. There was tear gas in the air, flashbangs lighting up the night, federal agents detaining people, the whole 9 yards. Newsom came out raging, accusing Trump of abuse of power. He said Trump commandeered 2,000 Guard members and put everyone at risk.
We start with some breaking news out of California. A judge says the Trump administration violated federal law when it decided to put National Guard boots on the ground in Los Angeles this summer. And you may remember that deployment was in response to protests against immigration enforcement operations. But in a 52-page filing that was out today, U.S. District Judge Charles Breyer found the administration broke an 1878 act that prohibits the use of military for domestic law enforcement. So for much more on this.
And I'm sitting there thinking, Gavin, you already had people burning down parts of the city. This wasn't exactly a meditation retreat before the Guard arrived. But of course, he tried to spin it. As if Trump personally showed up with a matchstick and said, let's make downtown LA look like a bad action film. Maybe, just maybe, if the governor had handled things in the first place, the president wouldn't have had to step in. But common sense seems to be on vacation here.
Not heard from the White House for an official reaction about this, but no doubt that they will be pushing back. We've heard all weekend from senior administration officials, including the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, about their position. She said that the city would have been in dire straits without this intervention.
And here's where it gets messy. People in California, yes, even in California, started saying they'd had enough. They didn't want streets looking like chaos. They didn't want violent protests. And they definitely didn't want their governor looking clueless while everything went down in flames. That frustration? That's going to stick, especially when we start talking about the future. Because if Newsom has dreams of 2028, this whole fiasco is going to come back to haunt him.
Federal appellate court that ruled against you and your administration as it relates to your ability.
Well, they ruled against our country, the court, and they ruled against us before. It's a very liberal court.
You called it highly partisan in your
Well,
social
it certainly
media
is. It certainly
and in
is.
fact, it was along ideological lines, 7-4.
Well, except that we actually got one of the Obama judges that was appointed by President Obama voted in favor of the tariffs because he felt it was imperative for our country to thrive and survive even.
Think about it. Voters are going to compare two eras. One side will say, remember when Trump kept stacking court wins and looked like the guy bringing order? The other side will say, remember when Newsom was governor and California felt like the background setting of a survival video game? Who do you think people are going to pick?
It was ruled that President Trump's use of the National Guard in Los Angeles this summer was illegal. In his 52-page ruling, federal judge Charles Breyer says that Trump violated a 19th century law barring the use of soldiers as cops. The judge then warned the efforts to send troops into other cities could amount to, quote, creating a national police force with the president as its chief.
Now, here's the part that makes me laugh a little. Newsom still walks around like he's entitled to be the Democratic nominee. He acts like the DNC is just waiting to hand it over. No competition, no sweat. And honestly, can you blame him for thinking that? Watch what I mean. Kamala Harris in 2024. Biden drops out, nobody votes in a primary, and suddenly she's the nominee, just like that. Democracy by disappearing act.
No federal troops in the city of Chicago. No militarized force in the city of Chicago. We're going to defend our democracy in the city of Chicago. We're going to protect the humanity of every single person in the city of Chicago.
Now, the Fraternal Order of Police Chicago Lodge number 7 made a social media post yesterday. It reads, "Crime is down. The murderous mindset is not. Just like the numbers can explode, until we have more cops, some federal help is welcomed and appreciated." And also happening today, Governor J.B. Pritzker will hold a press conference in Chicago at 3 p.m.
Brendan, really good to have you. So we just got a bit of a primer from Courtney Kuby on the National Guard and the ways that it can be used legally. This judge said this way was illegally. If Donald Trump was trying to argue that, no, he does have that authority, what is the argument going to look like? And I ask you this because I presume they're going to appeal.
Yeah, they will absolutely appeal, and it's going to be an absolute brawl at the Supreme Court. Just to lay the basic foundation here, so as you suggested, this is a case that concerns the Posse Comitatus Act, which is a law from right after the Civil War, so about 180 years old, that embodies the basic idea, as you said, that the military should not be used for domestic law enforcement. It's an idea that...
And now there's the redistricting saga. Republicans filed an emergency petition with the state Supreme Court, saying his plan was unconstitutional. They argue it skips the public review process, strips voters of independent oversight, and gives Newsom way too much control. And honestly, the polls aren't helping him either. Californians aren't buying into Proposition 50. They're asking why he's even doing this, why he's bypassing voter commissions meant to prevent this kind of power grab.
For the past few weeks, National Guard troops to Chicago has been the topic of discussion. As you mentioned, much mixed reaction. Of course, the Illinois veterans will hold a press conference today to say no to the deployment of troops, while the Illinois Freedom Caucus says they want local leaders to accept federal crime assistance. Now, over the Labor Day weekend, 50 people were shot, 8 people died. According to President Trump, this is why he wants to crack down on crime in the city of Chicago. Mayor Brandon Johnson and Governor J.B. Pritzker both reject the deployment of troops. Pritzker called it dangerous. Johnson says it's federal overreach.
40 million mail-in ballots are about to flood the state, and the verification system is shaky at best. That's his gamble. If the proposition fails, if voters reject it, his political future gets slammed harder than any lawsuit ever could. And while he's gambling, Trump is just stacking wins like it's a casual hobby. Even the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, one of the most liberal courts in the country, ruled unanimously that Trump had the authority to deploy the Guard under federal law. A unanimous liberal court siding with Trump. If that doesn't sting, I don't know what does.
Johnson signed an executive order on Saturday establishing the Protecting Chicago Initiative. It aims to protect residents from the potential mobilization of National Guard troops in the city and demands that President Trump stands down on his threats to send troops for crime and immigration. Mayor Johnson attended a Labor Day rally yesterday where the focus was promoting workers' rights and opposing the policies of the Trump administration. However, he did chant against national troops.
That ruling sets a whole new precedent. Basically, it says if governors can't control their states, the president can legally step in and handle it for them. That's the judicial system saying, do your job or someone else will. And for Newsom, that's devastating because the message is clear. Fail at leadership, and someone else gets the spotlight. So yeah, California delivered another round of political theater, and Newsom walked away with another loss.
Reporter Ann Flaherty. So first of all, and we know there's a recent ruling as well from a judge in Los Angeles that found that Trump federalizing the troops in LA is unlawful. So how does that play into all of this now? Would that limit Trump's ability to go into other states with the National Guard?
Well, it certainly complicates it because clearly there will be other lawsuits that will be filed if President Trump makes good on his threat to send troops into other cities and into other states. And I think it's worth pointing out that the judge did give them an opportunity to appeal his decision. So a lot of this will likely remain in legal limbo is my understanding of it. But it certainly does raise questions about if other judges in other areas with other jurisdictions agree with him.
The courts aren't siding with him. The people are losing patience, and every big moment turns into another fumble. This isn't just about Los Angeles or the Guard or even Trump. It's about one governor constantly stepping onto the stage only to trip over his own script. And if this really is his audition for the White House, I'd say the reviews aren't looking too good. Maybe it's time he picked a different role. If you enjoyed leaving a like and subscribing, more videos are on the screen now.